was on the list of potential places.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. All right. I think we have the cue to go ahead and get started. Well, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Shauna Medell, Storyraise's VP of Creative Studio, and I want to welcome you to this session of Storyraise Boost, a fast-track virtual learning series that'll go through the end of the year. For those who don't know, Storyraise is a solution for organizations to create personalized digital reports and videos. With a digital report, you can increase engagement with your donors and ultimately raise more funds. If you want to see a sample digital report made just for you, click the link in the chat to automatically create one. We have an exciting offer for everyone watching today. Both StoryRaise and our partner here, Capital Campaign Pro, are offering 10% off of our solutions. If you're interested, go ahead and reach out through the comments and we'll connect with you. Now, today we'll be chatting about board engagement that fuels campaign success. To have a successful capital campaign, you need board members who are engaged in your cause. Keeping your board informed and inspired takes more than an annual report or an occasional campaign update. Consistent communication and impactful storytelling help board members understand your mission, advocate for your organization, and support fundraising efforts. We're joined by two outstanding leaders from Capital Campaign Pro. We have Amy Eisenstein and Sarah Plimpton, who just published a book, by the way, A Board Member's Guide to Capital Campaign Fundraising, which I'm sure we'll hear more about in just a little bit. They're here to help us explore how nonprofits can use impact stories and engagement to turn their board members into stronger champions for campaign success. So, Amy, Sarah, ready to get started?
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
having us.
All right, great. Well, since no one knows us, right, let's kick it off with a brief round of introductions. Amy, if you could go first, share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we can toss it over to Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having us. I'm Amy Eisenstein. I am the CEO and co-founder of Capital Campaign Pro, but I'm a 30-year veteran of nonprofit fundraising and the last almost 20 years in consulting for nonprofits, helping them with innovative and creative ways to raise more money than they ever imagined possible. And that's what we're doing at Capital Campaign Pro. And I'm really proud to have co authored this book with Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for having us. It's such a delight to be here. So I'm Sarah Plimpton, based in Portland, Maine, and I am Vice President and Chief Happiness Officer at Capital Campaign Pro. So I have the pleasure of working with clients who are all over the country doing amazing things through their capital campaigns. And my background has really been in capital campaigns all the way through my entire career. Um, I've been consulting on campaigns, advising on campaigns, coaching in-house, working on campaigns as well. And now I'm doing it with Capital Campaign Pro.
Great, thank you both. And I gotta say, what a great job title, Sarah. Chief Happiness Campaign Officer. That's
Yeah.
that's just I already feel, better hearing that
Oh,
kind
I'm
of
so glad. Yeah, it's
that
a
kind
fun
of job
The,
title.
title.
the whole company's better because Sarah is our Chief Happiness Officer,
Yeah, I bet.
for
You
sure. And
you
all of
need
our clients benefit from that as well.
good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, on that note, we'll start with a very broad question. I'm sure we all have a sort of understanding of what it means to have board members involved in a capital campaign. But if you could tell our viewers fairly succinctly, what's the role of a board in a capital campaign? Why are they important, and how do they fit into this equation?
Sarah, you want me to start? And then you
Sure.
can help
Yeah.
out. Um, so, board members play a critical role in capital campaigns, in nonprofit governance, and fundraising in general. But for campaigns specifically, I think that there's an important distinction to make between what the board does as a whole, as a body of people, and what individual board members do and contribute. And what the board as a whole does is approves a strategic planning process, a vision for the campaign. Where is the organization going and what needs to be funded through a campaign? Sort of the big vision, and how are they going to get there? So, a campaign budget, a campaign plan, usually starting with a feasibility study. So, the board as a whole, as a group, as a governing body, sort of approves the vision and the plan. Um, Individual board members play a lot of different roles and have different responsibilities for a campaign, and not every board member plays the same role. We hope and expect that every board member is going to be a donor and think carefully and thoughtfully about their gift to the campaign. And we want everybody being an advocate and helping with the fundraising, but how they help and the role they play and how much they give will vary greatly from board member to board member. Sarah, what did I miss, or is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think, the engagement of the board really sets the tone for everyone else. When your board is really championing a campaign and a project that the campaign is supporting, it sets the tone for every other donor. So I think that, the board is the leader of the campaign in a way.
Yeah, that's great. No, really, they are campaign ambassadors in that way. And
Yeah.
if you can get them on board and to all speak the same language and to tap into their own network, it makes such a big difference from the very beginning.
Mhm.
Now moving on to a more deeper question. We've all been in the nonprofit world for quite a while, and I'm sure you've seen this on your side too, where a lot of organizations are only providing board updates through major campaign milestones, often through annual reports or some type of impact report. We
Mhm.
know in this virtual room here that that's never enough. What is ongoing communication with board members? Why is that so important? And also, what are they looking to hear
Yeah.
from their organization? Whoever
Yeah.
wants to take it, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons why ongoing communication with your board is important. But to name just one, I think you want your board members to have an arsenal of content at their fingertips for when they are, in the school pickup line or at a cocktail party and find themselves in a conversation with somebody who might be interested in your organization. So if you are supplying them regularly with meaningful stories, you're keeping that content fresh for them and top of mind.
Hmm.
Uh, One of the members of our team has this great saying, stories store and numbers numb. Kent Stroman, who's on our team, says that often. And I think it's really true that stories, that's what humans are meant to engage in stories.
Mhm.
And then in terms of what you want to be sharing with your board in the way of stories, I think there are a couple different categories that you want to be sure to hit. You of course want the stories that illustrate the need or the opportunity that you're seizing through your project or through your campaign because you want them to understand regularly why it's important that you're doing the work that you're doing. I think you also want to provide stories that illustrate outcomes and success and impact and maybe lives changed or communities affected because of the work. Um, you want to provide stories about the project itself and really sort of updating on how things are going as your building is coming to life or whatever it is that your campaign is funding, how that work is moving along. And then I think you also finally want to provide stories about philanthropy so that your board understands both what it takes to raise major gifts, right? It's not you just sit down with somebody and ask for $1 million and they give it on the first conversation, that, really sort of pulling the curtain back and showing boards, yes, we did get this big gift, but let me tell you the story of where that started and all the steps that were taken, I think can be really helpful for boards. And also, I think letting them know the way that their leadership has inspired confidence beyond them, right? So maybe telling your board a story about how, hey, you all reached 100% participation in this campaign. And that was really meaningful for that donor that just gave $1 million. Like they were really moved by that and excited to jump on board because all of you led in that way. Amy, what would you add? Anything?
No, no, I think that was great.
Yeah, thank you. I also jotted down story store and numbers numb. I thought that was just a really simplistic way to get to the point. The numbers are
Mhm.
important, of course, but if there's no
Right.
story behind them, it's just a bunch of numbers, right? Like the stories
Mhm.
give the numbers color and meaning.
Mhm.
And on the note of storytelling, we've already talked about how it could be a really powerful fundraising tool. Stories stick with us. There's so many organizations that do that well in companies, right? Even Disney, for example, like has really figured out how to tell a good story because those are the things that stick with you and make sure that you take an action. So how can nonprofits like the ones that we serve use storytelling before the campaign, during the campaign, after the campaign to keep their boards informed and inspired, really at every touch point during that campaign process? Amy, why don't we have you go first since Sarah went first last time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are so many ways that organizations should be talking about the campaign and telling the story of their project, the community they serve before, during, and after a campaign. And the story changes depending on the stage and where you are, and also the audience and sort of how you tell the story. So I mean, there's different modes of communication. So you might be telling a story one-on-one. You might be broadcasting a story. So I think it's important to think that through. But just for some examples, so before your campaign, we were working recently with a school and they wanted to add a gymnasium. And the story was that they were having to bus their kids a few miles away to use a gym and to do to play basketball, to play sports, and to get exercise. And so the story was that that was really disruptive to the day, and it wasn't conducive to whatever activities they wanted to do at the school. So it was really powerful, just even having the kids talk about how inconvenient it was and what a hassle that was. So that was, sort of one story. Before, telling what is the impact on the community and what difference it would make. During a campaign, or, in the middle of a campaign, the same school used stories of students who had received scholarships. So they were able to share, a mother of a scholarship recipient wrote in and they read that note during a board meeting. And that was a powerful story because it came directly from someone that was impacted by what fundraising had done and what fundraising was doing as part of the campaign. It wasn't just for a gym, it was also for scholarship. Story needed to be told as well. And then, after the campaign, of course, there are going to be so many stories about what happens in the gym, the impact on scholarship recipients. But I think there's also a story to tell about admissions going up because they now have a gymnasium and they have more scholarships. And so, admissions go up. So I think, or, enrollment, right? So I think there's lots of different stories once you start to think about it. To me, the most impactful way to get some stories is to actually ask board members, why do you give? Why do you serve on the board? Why do you care? Why are you here? And stories will come from that because, those board members could be volunteering at any organization or honestly at home having dinner with their family, but instead they're around your board table. And so just an exercise I like to do is at a board meeting, as we think about a campaign or as we're providing, quote unquote training, although I don't necessarily like to call it board training, but have board members jot down some notes like, why do you care? Why is this campaign important to you? Why is the school important to you, or the museum, or the, whatever organization it is. Jot that down and then turn to your neighbor and share. Why is this campaign important? Why is this organization important? And so they start to refine their stories. Not everybody's story has to be exactly the same.
Hmm. Great. All good food for thought. Sarah, what else?
Um, I mean, Amy covered it. My gosh. Yeah. I think, well, I'll offer one other thing. I think one of my teachers once said to me, it was an English teacher once said to me, and it was in a creative writing class, when you're trying to write about something like really big, right? So the example she gave was if you're trying to write about war, for example, don't write about war. Write about the pair of socks that are on the side of the road that were clearly like lost in a family shuffle to escape the war, right? And so I think about that often when working with nonprofits of like sometimes we try to write about like the big, mission or the big vision or the big thing that we're doing when it's like actually go really small. Like really concrete and specific. It can almost yield the most powerful stories as opposed to like the big grand,
Mhm.
thing. So that's one thing that I would offer.
No, and that's a great addition because I think so often people are so they're looking at everything from this view, right?
Right.
This like 30,000 foot view. And it's like we got to squeeze in the mission and like the
Right.
overall goals while really missing out on the fact that every single story is in service of the greater mission.
Exactly.
Like it
Exactly.
all connects. You don't have to use the same language in every story to tackle the mission and the overall goal. And
Yep.
it's a good reminder for people. And this is usually where I see internal teams butt heads, where the communications team is saying this and the development team is saying this. So it's good to make sure you're all on the same page as to what does it mean to tell a good story? Like what
Yeah.
are we actually looking for?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Well, as another question, this one I will say is a little bit trickier. Um, we know that a lot of nonprofits are doing more with less, as they have been for many years, but that just seems to be the running norm in this world. Many have small teams. With that in mind, is there, let's say, maybe one practical way that you would suggest to keep board members engaged and informed without creating more stress for the nonprofit itself? Because that's
Yeah.
another, right, an extra burden of communication. Maybe they're not doing certain things already that they want to do, but of course that's going to
Hmm.
take more time, more planning, more hours of execution.
Hmm. Yeah. So here's one idea. You have your board meetings. Those are standard, they're coming on the calendar at whatever cadence your organization has them, whether it's every month, every quarter. I would advise a small team to think about their board meetings as an opportunity for curation.
Hmm.
So there are a couple ingredients that you want to be sort of constantly braiding together for your board. You want to offer them, first and foremost, obviously, like they need straight facts and information so that they can govern and make decisions for the organization. So that's like basic, right? But then around that, you want to weave in things like mission moments where you are letting them touch and feel and experience your organization and the mission that you're all, gathered around to try and promote, right? So, like, that's one ingredient, mission moments at board meetings. Like, do you have time to squeeze one in? Um, you also want to think about another like thread in the braid would be education or training, right? Like what are the skills you want your board members to be able to, embody? And how are you introducing elements of that into your board meetings? And then there's stewardship, right? Like how are you, and I guess in the stewardship bucket, I would also think about sort of like culture, like culture of the board? Like, are you giving the board opportunities to relate with each other and be colleagues together and friends together, or to like get to know each other, right? But also like in that stewardship piece, I think it's also like, are you thanking them? Like, are you like expressing gratitude to them? So I think that those are sort of the like four or five elements that you want to kind of weave into your board meeting. So it's mission
Hmm.
moment, touching the work, education and training, information, right? Like informing them of things, governing and deciding, and stewardship. And you probably can't fit all of those things onto every single board agenda. But if you look globally at like the arc of your board agendas, you can start to think about, okay, like what have we not done in a little while that we might need to like weave in? Or like, what did we do last month that might connect to something we're doing this month? And if you can sort of think globally about how you use that board time towards that end of like teeing up different opportunities and types of engagement for your board, you can cover a lot of ground.
Great. Thank you.
Can
Yeah,
I
write
add
down those
some?
5 items.
Can I add something to that
Yeah,
one?
please.
So I think you started with the idea of small development teams, right? Is that, I mean, that's sort
Yeah.
of the crux of the question is these small development teams, which I think is, most nonprofits and certainly our sweet spot and specialty area. We almost exclusively work with small teams. And
Hmm.
the truth is that they are busy and overwhelmed and overworked and under resourced. And so, dealing with the board or managing board members or being responsible for training board members is just one more thing that's thrown on their plate and they don't have time to do. So I'm going to be a little promotional for 1 second and just say that is why we wrote this book. We wrote a board member's guide to capital campaign fundraising to help development directors answer questions with and for their board members, so that the development teams don't have to have all the answers, but they can come to the answers with their board members. So each chapter of the book is a question that board members might have, like, what happens if we don't raise all the money we need for our campaign? And so, the way we envision using the book it for small development shops is, let's all read this chapter, which is only 4 pages, right? It's not huge. It's, come to the next meeting, everybody gets a copy of the book on your board, and at the next meeting for 20 minutes we're going to discuss, how much do I have to give? And it's not about me personally, how much do I have to give, but how do I think about my giving?
Hmm.
Or do I have to ask friends and family for money? So, like, all these questions that your board members are thinking about or worried about as you head into a campaign and as you're going through a campaign are answered in the book and structured in a way that it will stimulate conversation so that you can say, okay, it's a really important question for us to ask and explore together as a board. What happens if we don't raise all the money we need for this campaign? And then you have a discussion about it that's sort of guided by that one chapter in the book. So I hope that helps.
No, it's great.
Yeah,
You got to have a focus and to keep everyone on track. And,
yeah,
Sarah, to your point too, right? If you can't fit everything into an agenda, so
right,
especially, maybe a 1 hour meeting.
right,
So you gotta space out your
right.
those agenda items.
Right. And the
Um,
book can like 100% plug into that training and education bucket. So
mhm.
you're a busy development director and you know you need to do some stuff in that regard. Our book is you just kind of plug and play. Like give them that chapter, say, read it. Here are the three things we're going to talk about at the next board meeting relative to this chapter. And boom,
Yeah, and
you've
it's
done
great
it.
because every
Yeah.
chapter is, bite-sized information, then you can discuss in
Yep.
20, 30 minutes.
Yep.
We're going to drop a link to their book, to Amy and Sarah's book in the chat, so that way you can go ahead and click and take a closer look. Amy and Sarah, thank you so much for a great conversation. You gave us a lot to think about. Appreciate your time and your insights. And again, to learn more about Capital Campaign Pro's work or their new book, A Board Member's Guide to Capital Campaign Fundraising, you can click the link that I just mentioned in the LinkedIn live chat. And one more reminder, if you want to see a sample digital report made just for you, click the link in the chat to automatically create one. And one final plug for our special discount. Both Storyraise and Capital Campaign Pro are offering 10% off of their solutions. If you're interested, go ahead and comment in the chat and we'll reach out to you directly. If you have any questions about Storyraise or anything we discussed during our webinar today, you can reach out to me at shauna@storyraise.com. We're so glad you all could join us for this installment of Boost. Stay tuned for our next session on August 26th. We'll have experts from Version 2 AI to talk about thank you techniques that drive donor retention for community foundations. And I'll see you all next time. Thanks again, Amy and Sarah. Really nice to meet you and to chat with you.
Thanks,
Thank
Shauna.
you, Shauna.